Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we're going to be taking a look at 9 Season 2 plus KvK groups, SS2-2 through SS2-10. Giving you updates on their starting today 5-ish recap on how things are going there. So, again, we are currently, I think, in SS2-2, so we're going to start off by giving you the rundown, showing you what's changed and where are we currently. So, right now, this matchup is about 29.9 billion versus 30.1 billion. So it's a very fair matchup that came in with 5 alliances versus 4. Starting on the dueling side, we had OG, OGA, EIS, Fake, LSK. On the more Brez side, we had SK1, SK2, VVV, and Tribe. Now, on how it looks, you can see that there's just a few battlefronts at the moment, right? So we have a front here that's been pushed. We have one here that's got 3 flags until pass. You have another one here, and then you have one up here. Now, if we're taking a look, this right now is SK1. They've been pushed by OG. And I just wanted to show the setup here, how, just well this is done by OG, where they've built, not touching, but closest to the pass to limit the potential amount of spots that cities can be placed, therefore forcing anyone on the inside of the pass in Zone 3 to have to fight from within the pass, mostly by sending troops out, which only causes longer delays and replenishment times. And it's just a really good setup when you're thinking about how to divvy up a pass, because if you put flags here and you're connecting, it's actually not the worst idea if, for example, they built like this and then they place flags along here that, or even if it's like 1, 2, 3, something like that, where it forces them to have to kill these, right? You're kind of, in a sense, layering your flags off, where you're kind of creating these prerequisites or hurdles they have to overcome before they kind of get to the main stuff. That actually would be okay as well, if they're able to. Otherwise, again, I like the defensive setup that they're applying. Then we get to the next front, which you can see here is, once this loads up, this is OG. And they got a flag getting close to pushing up here on VVV. Remember, they got 3 flags left. Then if we get up here, you'll see this is SK2. This is EIS. We have Fake. And then we have LSK. Now, if we zoom in, you can see 1, 2, 3 flags are being destroyed right now. One's being built. And then another one's being destroyed up here. So based on how this looks, you could argue the trend is that, okay, this is pretty much over, right? It's very much in favor of the dual inside forces for this matchup, which, again, lasted, you could say, about 4 days, even though it kind of feels like, hey, we're just kind of cleaning up territory at this point. And again, I'd love to hear from anyone and everyone on how your KvK experience has gone up to this point from any of the groups that we're going to touch on. Then let's get over to SS2-3, which is really, for the most part, our main event, like we've talked about. This is the TFS Noir group. And on the dueling side, right, this is a 6v4. You have Dawn, Dusk, EP77, Noir, PSC, MTK versus TFS, FS, TDR, and TNS. Now, based on how things are going, you can see PSC is here, Noir is here, Dawn is here, we have Dusk, we have EP77, and then we have MTK. Now, we need to zoom in a little bit so you can kind of see where the fronts are. We have essentially a front that is here, right? One here. We have a front that's here on the ramp. We have another front that's over here, right? So these are the 4 that we have right now, or I should say 3, right, with one that's really long, that you're seeing for the kind of the main fights. If we zoom in, you can see here kind of how the setup is, right? Lots of flags, lots of flag layering, lots of barricades, and then you can see here with TFS, I think they're building another flag right now. It's kind of becoming a little bit of a turtle game, a lot more so than I thought, but I think partly is because, maybe both sides are okay with just healing up a little bit so they can continue the fighting. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that, right? It's just, again, you could argue both sides are somewhat depleted. Why not slow play it a bit, have a little bit more healing, at least when it comes to kind of the main alliances or the fighting forces. Same thing up here, right? You're just seeing multiple flags, multiple keeps, lots of turrets, and again, just more layering that you're getting, right? More turtle defensive. And then we get over here to the east side, which is, again, this is where you're having the Dusk. We have EP77, they're fighting, and then a little bit of MTK. and it's TDR, and then a little bit of FS, and then TNS, depending on how far they've been able to work there. I'm shocked a bit that TNS hasn't come up more with territory, but again, this is where you're kind of getting the next fight, right, that's happening at this point. And you can see that if we look here, we'll zoom in a little bit, and you can see FS, looks like Dusk, some members from Dawn there are fighting, and then we have some members up here from TDR, right? So you can see that fighting is going on still a little bit. I'm imagining they're trying to push this flag potentially here, or maybe even this flag here on the TDR side, just for, again, trying to get a little bit of clearing so they can get to that next line, which is going to be that EP77 line just behind in red. But that's the state of things right now, right? Again, the likelihood is we're going to see a lot more PvP just based on how this looks. It doesn't necessarily seem as though there's kind of one overwhelmingly winning side, even though you could say that they've made up some ground thus far, or a little bit more ground on the TFS, FS, TDR, TNS side, because they are pushed a little bit more, but it's not anything I would say that's overwhelming just based on how the kind of overview theater of war looks on the entire map. Now let's go ahead and get over to SS2-4. This one is probably not going to be that long. This is pretty short because this is 42 TC versus ROTA, MSFT, and Fang. This is a 1v3. And that's pretty much is kind of how it's gone. You can see 42 TC has now been pushed back to the pass. Their last one is now being destroyed, even though it's going to be a slow one, and that's pretty much it, right? Season was kind of already always over. It was just a matter of, well, how much PvP and merits is 42 TC going to get out of how long they can stay in the final zone? I mean, just one way to word it, kind of is what it is. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. But again, I'd love to hear from any of the people that were there, especially with 42 TC, on, hey, did they enjoy kind of how things played out, or was it just unfortunate, right? Did at least some people get some PvP fill in, right? That would still be nice to hear, especially if it wasn't like, oh yeah, it was just a total L the entire time, right? At least when it comes to hearing feedback. Then we get to SS2-5. This is, I would say, probably the third to fourth next enjoyable kingdom when it comes to how it started, based on the power differential and what the expectations or hopes were, and how much it could keep up. And I'd probably say fourth. Well, yeah, three or four, somewhere in there. But let's recap. So Duel Inside is TATM, EXG, EXL, Sky, UDF. They're about 34.7 billion power. On the more Brez side, it's GG83, GG13, and 066. So it's a 6v3, 34.7 billion power versus 20.4, so almost 15 billion power more on the Duel Inside versus the more Brez side, on top of which GG and company were fighting basically kind of a 3-zone versus 1-zone as well, even though you could argue that it was really more Zone 3 and Final Zone. There was still a little bit of PvP that was happening in Camelad from some light pressure there. However, when we look at how the Zone 3 looks here on this side, there's not really any pushing there. If we look over here, there does still seem to be some potential constant pressure, right? I mean, they've been kind of fighting this flag here on the southern side for a while. Now some GG83 are coming down to help. You can see also here that 066 is here. You could see GG83, I believe, is pretty close right now. I'm imagining that they're probably getting, let's see here where that bridge was. Oh, here it is, right? So here's kind of like the death bridge, if you will, that we've seen them fighting on a little bit now. And again, they're probably getting up for another fight. I mean, this is pretty defended, but again, how long will they be able to hold is always going to be that thing. And then, oh wow, looks like there's some other units that are over here on the EXG side. Yeah, so it looks like maybe just trying to apply pressure, because again, the only way you can get over here is through the bridge, right? You can't get through here on the mountain range because it's blocked off. If you look at the situation here, they're probably going to end up pushing them back to the flag. I think this is the GG13. Yeah. And again, you can see they're building. They got the next one coming up right now. And then over here, which is 066, I have to imagine that they're probably getting close to pushing. And you can see EXXL, 54 minutes. They'll probably get the fort after that, disable the flag. And then at that point, and then same thing with KPT, right? They've already been pushed back, and that's just kind of where it is. I will say it is unfortunate because I was really looking forward to TA and TM having a little bit more of a balanced fight, for this season, just to kind of see how things could go, right, if it was a straight-up fight on both sides. And I think even on their end, sure, the GG group is still fighting and putting up numbers, actually going out and attacking, and not just, kind of turtling and defending and receding back into their zone 3 to then start pushing the south side, right, to kind of push those out, if you will, which they could do, and I don't necessarily think anyone would fault them for it. But the fact that they're still fighting and still want, some more smoke, if you will, very similar to the 42 TC situation, I think is commendable, right? Even with the NK situation we'll get to in a bit, the fact that they didn't just kind of throw in the towel and say, okay, well, screw it, so to speak, right? Even though the power differential is wide, and it's pretty clear where an overwhelming or a very big advantage lies, we can say, they're still showing up, right? So props to them and GG's. And again, I would imagine on the TA and TM side, right, if they could have got more of a fair matchup, then it almost hurts me to think that anyone wouldn't want more of a fair matchup, because if you get a more balanced matchup, you're going to have more PvP. It's going to last longer. It's going to be a lot more fun, because it's not just going to be over in a day or two. And I don't think anyone would really be against that, at least, right, for how I see it. And I know from others that I've had conversations with, right, they would rather have a weeks-long PvP than just 1 to 2 days worth of PvP, especially when you've been waiting a month and a half, give or take, for the final zone to open here, right? You don't want just a day or two of PvP to satisfy your month and a half, waiting period. With that in mind, that's how SS2-5 is playing out. Let's go ahead and move on to SS2-6. Now, this was, I would say, the third matchup that we were looking forward to when it came to how close the powers were. This was just a bit disappointing. And I say that because on the Doolin side, this was a 4v5. Doolin, we had TPD, Dora, FTW2, and RR. They came in at about 24.4 billion power. More Brez, which was SS50, ROE, NTS, ROA, ROZ came in at 24.1 billion, right? So it was only about a 300 mil differential, 4 versus 5 alliances. And to really not sugarcoat this at all, the TPD, Dora, FTW to RR side, just got pushed, and got pushed consistently from the moment the final zone opened all the way back to their passes. And you could see that here where you look at TPD, right, they're back to their pass. R&R is back to their pass. Dora is back to their pass. And then FTW2 is back to their pass, right? Now, FTW2 ended up moving. I believe they were here, and then they scooted up here, something like that. And there was a switch up. But the fact is that there wasn't, at one point that I saw, where their union side was holding for a significant period, whether it's just kind of holding at a stalemate or a break-even point, or pushing the other side where they were taking multiple flags and making up ground. And so it is curious to me when you have this KvK group out of the other KvK groups that are a little bit closer, or that are just about-ish close in power, but we're seeing longer-lasting sustainable PvP from their KvK versus this one. Like, to me, that's a big question, is just wondering what happened, right? And like I've alluded to as well, I may reach out to TPD, Dora, FTWRR, right, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, up to all, or some, and just ask, how did it go? Because obviously I wasn't there the entire time, so I don't know, was it just low activity? Was it people just not having troops? Was the fighting potential just not all the way there, right? Was the expectation versus the reality of how many showed up, who showed up, for how long they showed up, etc., just not meeting what the hopeful standards were, or just what the general hopes were? Was it other reasons or other causes? It would be curious to find out for me. I think that's an interesting storyline to ask about. Then we get to the next group, which is going to be SS2-7. We only got 4 left here. And how we doing on time? Okay, not bad. Then we get to SS2-7. And again, this is very similar to the 42 TC and slightly the GG, but this is NK versus BXS RTG Owl. And Remember, it was one alliance versus 3. Feet in more Braz. Wow, still haven't capped a Hydra. I think that's rough, because I imagine that they would have had to attempt Hydra a couple times. But with how things are going right now, you can also see, remember the big update that we had, or I guess that might be a video coming out later, on how it is exactly that BXS was able to take this level 4 pass, or sorry, the level 5 pass, coming from Final Zone down into Zone 3, and basically now kind of sandwiching NK on 2 fronts. You can also see here, right, that there's a lot more units pushing in now from the level 4 Spire. And again, whether that's doing some PvP here, I'm curious. Yeah, it looks like NK is setting up or hanging out in the Hydra for a little bit. But again, you can see here BXS, RTG have already, or let me see, I think it should be both BXS and then RTG, yeah. So they're already pushing down, right? When you look at how this is going. So they're coming down already. And I don't know if they're still building. Maybe they're just taking a pause for a moment. But this is NK here, right? So they're pushing down a bit more. And you can see this is the area that they need to try and be at here, which I guess I'm somewhat curious. Oh, I see. Yeah, so they were able to build it, but they just kind of hopped back, or I guess connected in that front. But they could keep building southwest towards NK again. Maybe it's just pausing for a minute there. But you have NK, NB, NW, who's here in blue. And now they're pretty much all, NK's pretty much all pushed out. I mean, this was pretty overwhelming. This was like a 9 bill alliance versus 26 billion for the estimated power differential, right? So this was already overwhelmingly against the NK group, just based on the alliances that went into Final Zone, and then where you're seeing it now. And now they're going to be getting pushed from the Spire, and then also from the north coming down into Zone 3. So we'll see how long that ends up lasting, which to me, it just feels like it's more of, hey, how long is it going to last, versus realistically, NK and NW and NB, right, being able to push them and kind of regain control of that northern level 5 pass, and then continuously holding the Spire as well. It just kind of feels like, it's just a matter of maybe a day or two at this point, depending on how aggressive the other side is planning to be. Then we get over to SS2-8, and this one is, honestly, I think just yet again another situation where kind of a decent power differential played into how Final Zone ended up or concluded. This was dual inside TO FSK, coming in about 13.3 billion before everything. More Brez was BDO and PTW 18.8 billion. You knew that they applied a lot of pressure pretty much day one on them, or we should say from the get-go. And TO and FSK were nearly immediately pressured at their gates. And even though FSK and TO had a little bit of a resurgence going into the end of the first day and maybe going into the start of the second day, after that short spurt, you ended up seeing BDO and PTW just continuing the onslaught and the pressure of just showing how much activity they had and being able to overtake, and now they're pretty much running Final Zone, with those two other alliances being pushed out at their respective passes. You can see TO there, we see TO there, and then FSK has their 2 level 5 passes over here, but there's not really any territory that's been pushed in. Then we get over to SS2-9 as we get to our second to last. And SS2-9, this is where really nothing's happening. I mean, that's the short version of it. This is the FGHT MILF DILF group, but all 3 of those alliances were allied, and there's really nothing else that's going on right now. Then we get over to SS2-10, and we see that this is the LNV GD FSKG, which was in Doolin. They averaged about 18.8 billion, going up against more Brez, NXS, RXS, and A Squiggly C at 17.9 billion, right? So about a 1 billion power differential. But even though there's only a 1 billion power differential, the LNV GD FSKG union, I would argue maybe not as fast as the SS2-6, like the TPD Dora FTW2 RR versus SS50 ROE NTS ROA ROZ group. But this was pretty quick with how, I don't know if I want to say overwhelming, but there was a clear advantage that you could see being displayed in how quick they were able to start making ground and pushing their opponents back to their level 5 passes. And I would imagine if you asked any of their players, would they have loved if the PvP lasted a couple more days or even a week longer? I'd have to say that they would probably overwhelmingly say yes. And I think that's the case for probably almost all of the groups, with the exceptions of the ones that are obviously still going strong. With that in mind, you can see they've been pushed back to their gates, right? So you had NXS, AC, and remember, RXS I don't think had made it in yet, so it was really for the most part a 3v2. Like, again, let's be clear there as well. That, again, they didn't have RXS there, which was a 4.4 billion, but they were the lowest powered alliance out of the two. NXS came in at 7.7, A/C came in at 5.8. So with that in mind, you can see, again, they've been pushed back to each of their passes, and that pretty much rounds out SS2-10. With that in mind, actually did pretty well, about 21 minutes here. I would love to hear from you. If you are in any of these KvK groups and the season final zone has pretty much already been decided, you make the argument that, okay, hey, you're just basically going to kind of farm. Maybe you do some blitzkrieg and some small pushes here and there, maybe at most, right? How did the season go for you? What are your thoughts on it? Again, would you have loved to have more of a fair and balanced matchup? And if so, how long would you like to have PvP playing out for? Do you think after Final Zone happens, like, look, if I can at least get a week of just back-to-back 7 days worth of PvP, even if it doesn't last for the entirety of the Final Zone until end of season, like, I'm satisfied with 7 days? Or would you be satisfied with 5 days? Are you satisfied with 2 weeks? Like, how long, what is the number of days in your mind that you'd like to see sustainable PvP happening for, with the realistic expectation and understanding that it's not going to happen for the entirety of Final Zone opening up until the end of season? But is that number a week? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 3 days? Is it 5 days? I'd love to hear. Let me know your guys' thoughts and then how the season played out for you in the comments below. That's going to do it for me. As always, until next time, I'll catch you later.